Hello, Home Slices. This is Kiera with Home Slice Adulting coming to you all with another review of Iyanla Fix My Life, Season 6, Episode 602, which is titled Raised by Monsters, Part 1. Now, before we get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, I want to say thank you for clicking on this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and to share this video with people that you think may like it. Now, let's jump right in because this episode was like very intense. So, the first thing I like to start with is to figure out who's who on these episodes of Iyanla. So this particular episode is about a collection of 5 siblings, 4 of which who grew up in the foster care system and who faced horrific conditions. Apparently, they were in 57 group homes as a result of their mother's addiction to drugs. So Rita is the mother of all the siblings. Now, I was a little bit confused because at the beginning of the episode, they were showing images of Rita as if she was going to be a part of this healing process. But for whatever reason, we find out later that she is not going to be a part of the healing process. So there's something weird going on there, but maybe we'll find out on part 2. Next, we see Kadeem, who is 28 years old. He is one of the twins, and he's the one who wrote into Iyanla, and he has the platinum blonde tips on his hair. Next, we see Kadera, who is Kadeem's twin sister, who's also 28. She's a very pretty young lady. We have Michael, who is 29, and who was beaten so badly that he developed epilepsy, and he is the creative one. We have William, who is 30 years old and who apparently has been incarcerated for about 14 years of his life. It sounds as if it wasn't consecutive, that he, was in jail and went back and forth and has spent almost half his life in jail. He's very handsome to me, even though he looks a little bit like and Andrew Caldwell, the I Am Deliverance guy. He looks a little bit like him to me, but I think he's very handsome. But and lastly, we have Shalimar, who is 32. She is the oldest of all the siblings, and she didn't go through what her other siblings went through per se, because she was actually raised by Rita's mother, her grandmother. So we are at the first meeting with all the siblings. They all kind of come in a little staggered. And first we have Kadeem. And Iyanla basically wastes no time. As soon as he gets in the door, she has him to pick up a, black plastic bag, because they had to move themselves around a lot, and black plastic bags was basically their luggage. And so there's a bag inside of the bag, and Kadeem opens it, and there's a crock pot in it. Apparently, someone who was in charge of him, maybe at a foster home or his adoptive parents, hit him in the head with it. And he says that he and his siblings had to spend about a decade facing abuse and trauma. So next we see Kadera, and she says that the sexual abuse began when she was about 5 years old. In Kadera's bag, she finds a bullhorn, and it represents how she has lost her voice. And she speaks very quietly. Next we see Michael. In Michael's bag, he finds white bread and water, and he immediately has this visceral reaction, and he says that for a month he remembers he was only fed 2 slices of white bread and a cup of water, and that's basically starvation. And so we're hearing about all of these terrible things that they had to endure as children, and it's horrifying. Next we see William, who is the oldest brother, and he said that he began his spiritual walk when he began reading the Bible while he was in prison. He says that he hasn't seen his siblings in about 16 years. And in William's bag, he finds handcuffs representing the times that he went to jail. And apparently the way he has dealt with his pain has been to take, a kind of criminal route. And last we see Shalimar. She says that none of them really consistently keep in touch. And in Shalimar's bag, which actually happens to be a suitcase and not a plastic bag, she finds a tiara because she was raised by her grandmother in, what she says was a stable and loving home. And For me, it comes off as if her siblings aren't able to identify with her, and maybe they're a little bit jealous of her upbringing. And so Iyanla has everyone dump everything that is inside the bags in the suitcase onto the table, and it's a big mess. Michael is very visibly disturbed, and I just feel so bad for him. He seems to have had the worst time dealing with all the things that happened to them while they were in someone else's care. And everyone dumping all their things on the table symbolizes everyone getting everything out in the open so that it can be cleared and so that it can be healed. And, if you don't put things out on the table, then you can't clear them. You can't get them out of the way. You can't deal with them and resolve them. So next we have a one-on-one with Kadeem. He calls his mother Rita, and he basically has no respect for her. He said he wouldn't feel any type of way if she passed away or anything. Excuse me. I'm a little tired. It's late. But anyways, apparently Kadira and Kadeem were in foster care from birth until they were about 11 years old when they were adopted. Kadeem says that he was 15 years old when his adoptive mother sent him somewhere to pray the gay away from him. He says that he was not taught about sex, that he was just told what to do, and that as siblings, they were forced to perform sexual acts on each other, basically just so they could eat. Iyanla says that Rita, their mother, didn't give birth to them. Well, she gave birth to them, but she didn't give them life. And so we find out that Kadeem fights a lot and has been locked up multiple times for fighting. He seemed very reluctant. The whole show, he seemed reluctant to tell us the number of times that he has been locked up. So I'm thinking that it's kind of up there and that he may be embarrassed by how many fights have gotten him put in jail. But he claims, he claims that he doesn't start the fights and that he's fighting the way that no one fought for him. That's something that Iyanla kind of got out of him. And that he also seems to take it as like this badge of honor to fight for others around him. But as Iyanla points out, it's not really working out for him. Like, if the fights you're getting into are getting you put into jail, you're doing yourself a disservice. Iyanla says that Kadeem's work is to resolve his anger so that he can stop fighting himself. And next we have the one-on-one with Kadira, and Iyanla says, in contrast to Kadeem, Kadira's work is to illuminate how her treatment in the foster care system has shaped her life today and to find her voice. And so Kadira says that, she remembers being 5 and being abused by people who were, 14 years of age and up. She says that she was starved, raped, and beaten. And Iyanla points out that when recounting these events upsets her, she makes no sound when she cries. And that's how she has learned to cope with things, is silence. And that, the silence doesn't serve you. It doesn't make, the pain go away or the memories stop coming. And, how do you heal what you can't even talk about? And so, Iyanla says that everyone needs a bitch. And I don't like to curse on my channel, but for the purposes of this video, I guess we'll use it because Iyanla has reclaimed this word to be an acronym for a being in total control of herself. And every woman needs to find her inner bitch, according to Iyanla. And that this person inside of you is going to back people up off of you. It's going to cause you to speak your truth and have a way of setting boundaries for yourself. It's and once you find that being that is in total control of herself, you become a better person. And so that was Iyanla's goal. And I found a lot of Iyanla's methods in this particular episode to be like a little unorthodox. Like, we know that she likes to use visuals and activities to help people really understand things, but the whole going out to the mailbox and screaming at the mailbox, "How dare you?" It was a little silly to me. And there were some other things that she did. It was a little silly as well, but I think the point got across because while Kadira was yelling at the mailbox, her voice sounded more confident. She sounded louder, and hopefully that activity, got through to Kadira and helped her in realizing, the power of her voice. So, but I still thought it was weird, okay? But anyways, next we see the one-on-one with Shalimar. And it's really interesting because it's clear to me that because she was raised differently from her siblings, there's a disconnect with them. And Shalimar is just happy to see everybody. And Iyanla brings up that Shalimar says that she feels left out because her siblings know each other and she doesn't. And I totally understand that. Totally get that. But a part of me feels like it's kind of a good thing that she doesn't know them in that way, because she would have been abused, equally, as the other siblings. But Shalimar says that her grandmother, Rita's mom, got custody of her when Rita decided she wanted to go off and be with some man. So Shalimar says she wants them to get to know each other so they can share their stories and that they can, become closer. Iyanla brings up that her siblings are mad at her and she doesn't really seem to know why. And I'm like, duh, they're jealous. Like, you got to grow up with family. You got to grow up with people who loved you. You had the basic necessities of life, food, drink, she probably got a good education. And so the thing that Iyanla pointed out that I really hadn't considered is that Shalimar also has a story to tell. And it's easy for us to say that because the four younger siblings had a life that was so traumatic that Shalimar's story is almost like negligible, but it's not. Shalimar also dealt with the abandonment that she faced from her mother, regardless of her having somebody else there, a family member, to raise her. So again, that was something I hadn't really thought about. But Shalimar is upset that their mom is the cause of all of this and can't really take responsibility for it. And Iyanla says that Shalimar has to be a good example for her siblings, in the absence of their mother. So next we see Iyanla talking with all of the young men, Michael, William, and Kadeem. And Iyanla places a lot of emphasis on birth order, and I kind of don't get it. And, that was the same thing that William was like, how do you figure that all of our stuff gets dumped onto Kadeem? And, Iyanla places a lot of emphasis on sharing the same womb. And, there is a special bond that siblings have. I have 6 brothers and sisters, and, I have a different bond with each one of them. And for me, I am the oldest of all of those siblings. I do my best to try to be a good example for my siblings, but the birth order thing to me is not as important as it is to Iyanla, and that's something that I still kind of don't get. But okay, Iyanla has a method to her madness, so I'm not too mad at it. But they start to discuss violence and how that has shown up in their lives as a result of their abuse. And Iyanla basically says it's unacceptable. It's not okay for you all to resort to violence because you can't fight, the people who abused you. And it's like, where are these people? That's my thought process, is that if there were people who were supposed to be taking care of him, who did such crazy, abusive, torturous things to them, where is the justice? Do they remember who these people are? Can they report them? I mean, that's something that I'm concerned about, something that Iyanla never brings up on camera, and that is something that's kind of in my mind. Has justice been served? Are these people still alive? Are these people able to serve time for things that they have done, years ago? That's just something that popped into my head. But moving on, Michael at this point kind of seems to check out, and Iyanla sees that Michael needs help the most. He says that Michael is the only one of the brothers that turns his anger inward instead of outward like the other two, and that it's eating away at him. So Iyanla wants them to know that they're connected by more than trauma, that it's not just the bad times that connects them, it's love as well. So we see Iyanla talking one-on-one with William, and she says that he is in breakdown. And so William says that he's been observing his siblings, and he can see their pain, and he can see Kadera in particular is in pain, and he feels like he's just never going to be forgiven by God for what he's done. And at this point, I'm asking, what has he done? We find out later on, but he says that they need each other, and my mind, I was thinking maybe he was not there for his siblings because he was away in jail. Because he's only 30, and he says that he spent about 14 of his 30 years in jail, so he had to have spent some of those in jail while they were still young adults. And maybe he was absent and not able to protect them. So that was my initial thoughts. And then Iyanla says, his siblings forgive him. And again, this is another weird part. The yelling at the mailbox thing was weird, okay? But this was even weirder. Now, I know that in previous episodes, Iyanla has had one guest lay down on the ground with their, stomach face down on the ground. And she claims that there's like something special about having your body be like laying down with your stomach to the ground. It's like helping to move energy from out of you into the earth or something like that. I don't know. So this is the second time I've observed her ask someone to lay flat on the ground on their stomach. But for them to be digging a tiny hole with like kitchen utensils, you're renting this house. Why are you using the kitchen utensils to dig a hole? And I think William had like the same thoughts as I did, like, what is she doing? And so she has him lay down and basically say things into the hole. She had to like kind of coax him into doing it because I don't think that he knew or understood what the purpose of this was. And to me, symbolically, she was trying to get him to release all of the guilt that he feels about the things that happened. And one of the words that he said that we could understand or that we could hear was molestation. And once he was done, they covered it back up and buried it. And to me, that symbolized them burying the things that he feels guilty about and that he feels shamed about. William says that he feels, responsible. But Iyanla says, like, he didn't have a lead to follow. He didn't know about his position as the older brother. And that he didn't have anything there to, like, give him a hint about how to behave, how to protect his siblings. He just didn't know. He was, a child just like all of them were. He's only 2 years older than the twins and 1 year older than Michael. So, he really shouldn't blame himself, essentially. So we see everybody together, and none of them know their mother's story. Shalimar says that their mother was 16 or 17 when she had her, and Iyanla suggests that Rita's absence may be because they need to heal things amongst themselves first. And I was thinking, like, maybe then they can all come together to confront their mother. Now, it reminded me of The Color Purple, when Celie finally like has it with Mr. And she's like, I got 2 children, and when we all get together, we're gonna whoop your head. That's what I thought about, all of them getting together to, I don't want to say gang up on their mom, but for all of them to have a relationship in solidarity to really hold their mother accountable. And maybe that is why she didn't come. I'm still interested in the exact reasons she didn't show up, but I guess we'll hear about that on part 2. We'll see. Moving on. Shalimar reads a letter to Rita from their homework, and come to find out Shalimar was molested too. Like, how is everybody in this family molested? Who is protecting the children? I just can't. I don't understand why childhood molestation is so prevalent. It's like almost everybody on Iyanla Fix My Life was molested as a child. Like, almost everybody. Think about how much trauma people face. And that's why we need to get past this whole rape culture type of thing, because this has long lasting effects on people. That's why I don't accept jokes about rape, or people taking rape lightly. I can't deal with that, because it's such a serious topic. It's such a serious thing, and it's something that has not been resolved in our society. We don't take it seriously enough. We let people who get caught raping people go free because they, have such big futures in swimming careers. It's just, I really can't deal with it. And I wish we could come up with something and figure out a way to prevent it from happening so much. Get off my soapbox. Moving on. So next, when Shalimar reveals that she was molested as well, William didn't know, but Kadeem said something interesting. He said he knows about one of the guys, which means either which basically means that she was molested by at least two people. And Kadera says that she knew. But Michael didn't seem to know either, because it looks like he checks out. And Iyanla says, your brain is going to explode. This is another weird thing that happens. That's a weird thing to say to somebody, that their brain is going to explode. She's trying to get him to breathe or whatever, but to say your brain is going to explode is weird. That kind of threw me off a little bit. But anyways, a medic comes over on the set to make sure that he is okay, and Michael expresses that he basically has come to the realization that his way of coping with all of the trauma has been to keep it in, and that has resulted in him hurting himself. And he understands that now, and now that he has come to that realization, I think that he can see that his siblings are there to support him, and that he does not have to take things out on himself. And she asked him to forgive himself, and it was a really sweet moment to see him come to that realization and to forgive himself for hurting himself. Moving on, Iyanla sees that William is still holding on to some guilt, and Iyanla is telling William to breathe, and she's telling everybody to breathe, and they are not breathing, William in particular. And so William tells, why he hates the people who hurt him. And we realize why William is actually upset and feels as if God will never forgive him for what he has done. And so he says that he would be stuck in the basement and he would be beaten until he came out of the basement and touched his siblings. So basically he was forced to molest his siblings. And Kadera really has a hard time with this and can't even look at him and is not breathing. And Iyanla puts them face to face and is saying he was made to do this. Like, he was forced. He basically didn't have a choice. And this part brought tears to my eyes, because they hadn't seen each other in, I think he said, like 16 years. Kadera feels like William's victim. William feels like he was a predator to his sister, and they needed to resolve this, and to see them be face to face and say that they love each other and that they forgive each other, and that they understand that it was, kind of circumstances that were beyond their control. They were children, and it was just very touching to me. And I felt like, Iyanla said this was the first time that they had a loving embrace, something that, was not forced upon them. And so, yeah, that was a really big moment, and it was like quite challenging to watch. But they asked each other for forgiveness. They embraced each other. And next we see them all at dinner. And so we see William sitting at the head of the table. Again, let's talk about this birth order thing, okay? Because Shalimar is the person who is the oldest. But William gets to sit at the head of the table. And I'm wondering if this is a restorative type of thing for him, because he feels guilty about not protecting his siblings, or if this is a kind of gender role situation because he is the oldest boy, he gets to be at the head of the table instead of Shalimar, or if it's because he, had to deal with the same trauma as they did and Shalimar didn't. I don't know the exact reason, but Shalimar's the oldest and she went at the head of the table, okay? I thought, again, the birth order thing is weird to me. Moving on, Iyanla says that she wants them to be together, to spend time together, to break bread together, and to, form, the love and community between them. She said she had a quilt made that has all of their faces on it and that each of them get to keep it for a year and that they should try to develop traditions with each other, which I think is pretty cool. And symbolically, Iyanla has them eat at the same table that she had them dump all the crap on when they first got there. And she says that, once everything is put on the table, you can clear the table, you can sit at the table, and you can break bread at that same table. So, it was all symbolic. Iyanla really doesn't do things just to do things. It's usually for a reason. And so, at the end, we find out that the siblings are working to keep in touch, which I think is really great. And I guess Iyanla's people reached out to Rita so that she could actually be a part of the healing process with her children. And I guess that's what we see in part 2. I saw, a commercial for it, and it looks like it's going to be quite interesting. So, I'm, ready to stay tuned for that. So thank you all for watching. This has been quite a long review, but this episode was like loaded with a lot of stuff. I'm going to be posting a review soon for the Love and Marriage Huntsville episode. I think it is the season finale. So we'll see if it's the season finale because I can't remember exactly. But thank you all for watching, and peace out, home slices.